From our studios in New York, Bill Moyers.
Welcome to the Journal. There's only one way to counter the power of organized money, and that's with the power of organized people. This is the theme of our broadcast this week. We've all seen in recent months how the insurance companies, the drug cartels, Wall Street bankers, corporate lobbies, and other powerful interests are reaching deep into their pockets to stifle efforts at reform, and they've been winning. It's been a year since the big financial firms blew a hole in the economy and took down the jobs, wages, pensions, and homes of millions of people. They would have gone down too, devoured by their own greed, were it not for the taxpayer bailout. But now, major banks and securities firms are on track to pay their employees up to $140 billion in compensation this year. That's more than the combined budgets of the Departments of Commerce, Education, Energy, Housing and Urban Development, the National Science Foundation, and the Environmental Protection Agency. Goldman Sachs, the godfather of Wall Street, is projected to earn around $45 billion this year in net income, with its employees slated to receive an average paycheck of $743,000. But get this, just this week, Goldman announced that its top 30 executives will forego their usual big cash bonus in response to public outrage over runaway compensation deals. Maybe people in the streets are getting through at last to Wall Street. Here's what I mean.
Are you tired of predatory lenders? Are you tired of mortgages or subprime mortgages? Are you tired of the banks losing?
You might have thought this was an old-time revival.
Somebody say I'm tired!
But this was not about the life hereafter. These people want a better world in the here and now. So earlier this fall, from foreclosure-blighted California and small farming towns in Iowa and the struggling suburbs of the East Coast, they came to Chicago to take on the financial giants whose greed and reckless gambling brought the American economy to its knees.
We're losing jobs. We're losing state employees. We're losing industry and businesses. We're losing farms and homes. And meanwhile, these people across the street are trying to divvy up their record profits in tens of millions of dollars worth of bonuses. And that's not fair. It's not fair.
Across the street, the American Bankers Association was holding its annual convention, the symbol to these protesters of a system turned upside down.
What it appears is that banks are getting richer, some of the employees and the officers are getting raises, while we're seeing more homes go under and people suffering in the community. What we're trying to do is to let the banks know we have more than a responsibility to take the money. They have a responsibility to help educate and inform and to work with community groups to stop the foreclosure. We need a moratorium on foreclosures in the state. We need to address many of the concerns of small businesses who are trying to keep afloat, able to get loans and access to loans, the money that was given to the banks. We just need to, we need a flow down. We don't need a trickle down. We need a flow down at this particular point.
Here in Chicago in the last 2 years, we've had foreclosure filings double in a 2-year period. Foreclosure were already a big problem in Chicago in 2006, but they jumped up to 20,000 filings in 2008. We have a neighborhood in Chicago that has 200 new foreclosure filings this year per square mile. So communities are hurting. That story is not getting out. These are the same folks that came up with the ideas that led to 30 years of deregulation, and we've seen how that worked out. They created the economic crisis, they created the foreclosure crisis, they needed billions and billions in bailout dollars, and now they're lobbying to kill common sense reforms that would protect everyday people.
From the Bankers Convention, the protesters moved on to the Chicago offices of Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs! Goldman Sachs!
That global Goliath who's been on track to divvy up the company's richest bonus booty ever.
We're fired up! Can't take it no more! We're fired up! Can't take it no more!
You took our tax dollars, we bailed you out. At least have consideration for the people who are flooding and feeding your bank accounts, your salaries. There's no compassion, there's just their own self-interest, their own greed. And they just want to continue with the same cycle, the same old thing. It's just like if you have Tide, you have the original Tide, and then they lie and say, we got the new and better Tide, but it's not a new and better Tide, it's the same product.
From there, it was on to a nearby branch of Wells Fargo, where protesters crowded into the bank lobby and for a short time disrupted business as usual.
I'll tell you what, the bankers haven't seen anything. The bankers are enjoying the money that our government gave them. It's time for us on Main Street to reach out to these folks and tell them, we want real reform. And when do we want it? Now! When do we want it? Now! When do we want it?
All we want is to have them regulated. We need banks, God knows we need them. But they've got to do business in a decent fashion. And if they won't do it themselves, the government has to make them do it.